Welcome to The Life of Hair. My name is James Atkinson. Thank you very much for joining into this week's episode. Now you can see this is a pixie cut tutorial episode, and as Rachel laughs hysterically here, I'll tell you a little bit about this pixie cut and why I love to use this particular sectioning pattern. And I can't enlighten you to exactly what I said here because I can't exactly remember, but basically we're going to take vertical sections through these sides here, and we're going to cut a square line that's travelling down towards the ear. I generally take a similar section on most haircuts when it comes to this type of haircut, pixie cut or similar. Using a similar section pattern makes life a lot easier on a commercial level and allows me to create simpler shapes that are more effective to cut on the salon floor. So after I've taken a few sections, probably about 3, I just cross-check my work horizontally just to make sure that everything is going in the right direction. Now the pre-section for this haircut runs through the parietal ridge, which is the bone just above the top of the ear as the head curves away from me, and through the occipital bone in the back, just as the head comes out as you travel up from the neck. Now, with this particular technique, we just travel from the front right-hand side or left-hand side, depending on your preference. I usually start on the right-hand side and travel around the head shape until we end up crossing over the center back. And then we repeat that process again on the opposite side to complete the sides of the haircut. Now, one of the difficult things that people struggle with quite a lot is getting both sides to match up, especially when you're not used to doing this. So once you've cut the first side and you're happy with the desired length, then you do need to go back and cut the other side maybe a little longer. Make sure you've got the balance right. Try and remember roughly how much you cut off the previous side. And then once you've got your balance there, you can just carry on with this particular haircutting technique. Now, lots of people avoid this technique based on the fact that they find that idea of balancing both sides very difficult. But one of the great things about working into the nape is you can control the shape around the occipital bone, I believe, much better. And especially when you're traveling into the sides, you carry on cutting a similar length or the same length all the way through the section. Whereas when I start in the back and I work towards the front, I find that I tend to want to build up more direct weight and over direction towards the front hairline. So that's something to bear in mind as to why you may want to try and perfect this technique. Now, I'm not graduating the sides. I've cut them perfectly square, but as I travel into the back, I am building up a little bit of shape by over directing each section onto the previous section. So the section that I cut behind the ear was pulled straight out, but the subsequent section, as you can see here at the root area, are being pulled slightly back towards the ear. That's going to build up a little bit of graduation in the back here and offer a slightly more feminine, softer shape in the back, rather than it travelling all the same length through the sides and into the back and giving me a much flatter shape through the occipital bone. So once I've travelled all the way through this left-hand side and I've crossed over and met the opposite right-hand side that I'd previously cut, you'll find that there comes a point where you have 2 guidelines. There will be a guideline from the right-hand side that I cut first of all, and the guideline from the section that I'd previously taken on the section I've just cut. This is a great way of knowing if you're going in the right direction, and this is why I cut from the bottom up to the top on each of these sections. So I'm trying to find that original guideline section, which you can see at the bottom of my fingers there, and work my way up to the previous section that I'd previously cut, knowing then that I'm actually in the right place. Now, once you perfect this technique, it is a great technique to have in the bag, and I can absolutely assure you that you will love, love, love using it, but it definitely takes a little minute to get your head into. So definitely practice on a mannequin head before you take it on the shop floor if you've never done it, or do it on someone that doesn't mind if you do a little mistake here or there. Once I finish the cross check, I'm going to go through and lightly scissor over comb. This is a great way of removing any finger marks and making sure the shape is refined to fit your client's head shape perfectly. I've dried it at this point also, just to make sure that the scissor over combing is easier, because when the hair is wet it can stretch and it can make scissor over combing much more difficult. One of the things that I always do when I'm doing a short haircut is lightly scissor over comb, using the mini trimmers now just to remove any light neck hairs or anything like that, and also alter the hairline in some cases, just to make sure that the hairline sits flush to the client's neck, not necessarily creating a tight taper. As you can see here, there is some softness left on the perimeter, but it's just important for me to make sure that the hairline sits nicely so the client can style their hair easily. Once we've gone through our scissor over combing technique and made sure that everything is sitting smoothly, we're then going to connect in the top, but not exactly to the sides. The reason I do this is I like to leave myself a little bit of leeway to be creative and make the haircut fit to the client's head after I've dried it. So I'm over directing all the hair back and just using a point cutting technique just to blend in the crown area a little bit. Then I'm going to push the hair into natural fall when I dry it, and that will give me a little bit of an overhang in the back. It will also connect it in some of that hair into the crown area, so that will give me less work to do when it comes to the refining phase. Once I've taken a little bit off this top section, I'm then going to dry the hair, as you can see here, and this is what was left of the overhanging hair in the back. So I'm just going to take a horizontal section, elevate it up, and point cut to remove the length. This is a great way of easily and quickly making the hair shorter, but also providing texture in this particular area, so we get a nice blend. One of the things that I find when you're working with the crown area specifically is that it can look quite chunky quite quickly. You've really got to be mindful of that crown area because the hair is traveling in all directions. So if you want to really fine-tune your crown areas, then just make sure you only use point cutting techniques and retain some length to ensure that you can remove that length afterwards without it causing you too much aggravation. A lot of people cut the hair quite short when it's wet, and then they don't have the leeway once it's dry. With connecting the top into the sides, again, I'm not going to make a perfect connection between the two because I don't always feel like you need to, and it quite often looks better when you don't. So what I'd use here is a channel cutting technique, and this is going to remove some of the length and the weight from this parietal ridge area and allow it to sit nicely over that area without it being too blocky or too liney, especially when there's such a contrast in the colours. Now I'm going to remove the length from around the ears to make it very clean and tidy around the ears, but I also want to not carve it around the ear solid line like we can do on maybe more of a gent style haircut. I always believe leaving a little bit of softness on women's hair is definitely the way forward, and in this particular instance this is no different. However, it doesn't always sit very well around the ear, so sometimes what I do is take a little horizontal slice, as you can see here, of hair, and I will cut that around the ear, and this hair is the hair that generally kind of sticks out over the ear and is actually stopping it sitting nicely around the ear. Once I've done that, I'm going to go through this top section and just connect into this front using a very simple point cutting technique, but I'm also holding my scissor angle slightly against the flow of the hair. I'm not making sure that I'm traveling into the hair exactly horizontal, which will remove some of the length as well as some of the weight from the hair, and this is going to provide more texture, more movement, and give Rachel hair a little bit more of a playful feel. Whenever I'm working on women's hair that is short, my overriding emphasis is on keeping softness in key places around the perimeter, in the top of the hair, through the parietal ridge, and in Rachel's instance I've left the fringe a bit longer as well, as she likes to sweep it off to the side. And you'll see in just a second as I style the hair, this is obviously going to play out in how Rachel styles her hair. She can have it slightly more up, she can wear it down, she can wear it back even if she wanted to. Rachel will mostly wear it off to the side as it is where you see it right now in this particular style. But the softness is the emphasis for me, guys. When you're thinking about women's hair, where can we leave softness? What can that look like? Softness through the parietal ridge where it connects to the sides, even if it's not a two-tone colour, is a great way of providing more texture to a shorter women's haircut. Through the fringe area, making sure we don't leave it too heavy right on the front, because one of the things that we can do is cut the hair from short to long and it leaves a big wodge of hair in the fringe. And you'll see with the point cutting technique that I just did, I made sure that I took away some of that hair from around that kind of hairline area and it travels then into the fringe with more texture that you can see here right now. So that's another area where we can promote texture and movement on a haircut like this. Leaving that little bit of softness around the ear, again, just promotes softness and making sure that the hairline's not too tight. Obviously, these are all things that we can adjust for creativity reasons, but for me specifically, I really like to leave these areas or some of these areas for added softness so that we can really retain the feminine feel of a shorter haircut on a woman. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'm going to catch you again next week for another episode of Life of Hair.